Yeah, Post Void. Holy crap.
Eyes bleed. The game.
So it's so I'm gonna briefly describe the game, and then I'm gonna read one of my favorite Steam review for it, and it will kind of get the mood. So the game is a first-person shooter, kind of old school, like old school Doom and old school Wolfenstein and stuff. Very fast-paced, and it's kind of like trippy and psychedelic or whatever. But one of the game reviews says, Wolfenstein's level layout had a hate child with Quake's movement, and that child overdosed on experimental hallucinogens while having a stroke. Good game. Recommended. And that pretty much.
I love that all of that, and it says good game.
Good game. Yes, it's exactly. It's a adrenaline rush in a game, right? It's a very fast-paced, psychedelic, trippy shooter.
So Adam streamed this, and I couldn't tell what was going on at first in the stream.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's one of those games where, like, everything. I hate using the word trippy and over again, but it's very like psychedelic, trippy. Everything is always moving, even like the walls and it's a lot of narrow corridors and stuff, but none of the walls are completely straight. Like everything's got kind of a curve, everything's off, everything is just weird and like moving around and breathing, and the colors are very vibrant, and it's also kind of dark and evil with like the enemy designs and stuff and the violence. It's very kind of in the same way that Hotline Miami is, right?
Yeah.
You've got that
Yeah.
very violent but also
Bright,
colorful, trippy thing going on with it. But basically the premise of the game is you have to get to the end of the level without dying. And the thing is, your health bar, which is this little vial of liquid you're holding in your left hand, is constantly going down. If you stand still, you die. And the only way to replenish your health is to kill enemies, and that gives you a little bit of your health back. So it really encourages a very fast-paced gameplay because you have to get to the next enemy and kill that next enemy, otherwise the timer runs out and you die. Really excellent game design for what they're trying to achieve, because the game is, like I said, an absolute adrenaline rush the whole time, because you're just always you're on the move always. Everything from the music, which is like this sort of dirty surfer upbeat rock stuff, but it's like distorted and loud and constant and fast. The music never stops between levels and everything. It's just always on. This game is, pedal to the floor the whole time, pretty much.
It knows what it's going for, and it fucking nails
it does. Yeah, exactly. And it's not like this huge, giant game you could spend 50 hours in or whatever. Like, the game is $3. I forgot to also mention the visuals are very pixelated, old school style. So if you're not into like retro kind of looking games, you're probably not going to be a big fan of this.
Wolfenstein 3D. It just straight up looks like Wolf 3D in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that the game is endemically giftable, right? Like it's $3. Throw it on somebody's list, just like I did to Dobby just now. Yeah, I said it. I'm calling you out.
And the way it plays, everyone can play it because it's so quick.
You just jump in.
Adam's best run through that I watched him do probably took 3.5 minutes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's also sort of I don't want to say rougeLITE or whatever, but it plays sort of like that. The levels are procedurally generated a little bit. There's some variation, so it's not the same every time you play exactly. And you have to get through all the levels. I think there's 11 levels. I have yet to get past the 5th level. Like, it's kind of difficult, at least for me. And then between each level, you get to choose between 3 perks. So it might be, instead of using your normal starting pistol, you have an Uzi, or you can change to a shotgun, or there might be one with larger magazines, so you don't have to reload as often, quicker reloads. I think there's one to your bullets will bounce off the walls and ricochet and stuff. Like, there's all these little perks that you choose from in between each run, so you can sort of make each run your own. But I don't think it's like super in-depth strategy, you know, Binding of Isaac style or anything. But it's enough to keep the game interesting and to give a little variation to each run, which I think is important, because you're going to be playing the first few levels over and over and over and over again until you get good enough not to die.
And then you'll die later and still play the first level.
Yeah.
What does roguelike actually mean? And it's generally referring to games that have like random generation is usually a core tenet of a roguelike game. Permadeath, so if you die, you're starting over the game from scratch. And that like every run is going to be a little bit different.
Worth mentioning that Rogue was a game that had these specific attributes, and then other games now are called rougeLIKE because it contains some of those novel attributes of the game Rogue that other games didn't have at the time.
Before we had the coined genre of first-person shooter, any first-person shooter was called a Doom clone. Yeah. Doom was not the first first-person shooter, but that's what everybody called them.
And to Dobby's question, rougeLITE is referring to the fact that stuff like Rogue Legacy, where there's persistence between runs.
Yeah, there's something that you're constantly unlocking or getting better at, or there's progress even in failed runs. Whereas a true roguelike is fully permanent death. Like there's no carryover between runs.